Hey John, welcome to my channel. It's a privilege meeting you again. So if you remember, we met last in 2016. A lot of things has happened since we met. It's been like 4 years. So if you can spare us a few minutes and tell us about the company and the products, that'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, Vivaldi, we make web browsers. And in some ways, for me personally, I've been doing web browsers as long as I can remember, since 1994, first with Opera and now with Vivaldi. And the basic principles of what we're doing is building a browser that provides what people need from a browser. So, our focus is just providing the most useful features. And we are not afraid to add features that people find useful. If you look at our team, we are about 50 people. We are in, the main office is in Norway. We have the biggest part of the team there. And we have a team in Iceland. And that's, by the way, where we host our servers. Mm-hmm. And then we have a handful of people in the US and a few people around the world. So we're a small team, but a very dedicated team, a team that has a lot of experience with building browsers. Mm-hmm. A big part of the group came from Opera. Mm-hmm. And obviously it was part of building Opera as a company. And now we are building Vivaldi with a similar frame of mind, where the focus is on building something that's really useful for people and focusing on the needs, what you need, basically.
What do you think differentiates Vivaldi from any other browser that's available right now for mobile or any other platform? What is the key differentiator?
There's a number of things. One of the things is our business model is not built on collecting data.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we are not collecting data on you, and we are actually focusing on keeping your privacy, because we think that's really important. Mm-hmm. So we're not collecting your data, and we are focusing on your privacy. Mm-hmm. But also, on the feature side, we're really, we have a lot of features that no other browsers have. And that's because we understand that you're spending a lot of time online in your browser. So providing a tool that actually allows you to work more efficiently, to kind of tailor it to you, because everyone has their unique requirements. That's unique to us. That no one else is doing that. The typical thing is just to provide a simplified browser, and basically the difference is distribution. So we are focusing on the individual, and we are working really closely with end users. We're getting feedback from people, and we are listening to users in a totally different way than what is normal. Instead of collecting data again on how you use the browser, we ask you, what do you want us to do? What would you like us to add? So the decision making is based on the individual requirements, instead of just saying, okay, we'll do some data analytics.
So how is, you told you are not collecting data. So how is Vivaldi more committed towards our security and privacy? People are more and more concerned about security on the internet. The more they're exposed to internet, the more they're worried about security and privacy. So how is Vivaldi committed towards both these two keywords, security and privacy?
Well, I always think the first level is always, okay, what do we do as a company ourselves? Can we look in the mirror and say we're not engaging in this? And the reality is we're not. Again, we're not collecting user data. We do count our users, but that's the extent of kind of what we are. We're not looking at kind of how you're using the browser and the like. But then we've taken it one step further, and let's say, okay, what about other sites and the like? So we've added a tracker blocker, we've added an ad blocker. So you as a user, you select how much information you want to give to sites and to the world out there. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we are also engaging in, basically, we're promoting the idea that this level of tracking that is happening today should not be allowed. Mm-hmm. We don't understand why it is allowed, that private companies are collecting massive amounts of data about users. I cannot understand how it can be allowed, and I think it should be kind of just stopped. And so we are promoting that. We by talking to you and others, by contacting, if necessary, governments and the like, because we think this is important. I think we should have an ad system that is based on the content that you're viewing, which is more reasonable. If you're on tech side, you should see tech ads. If you're on a fashion side, you should see fashion ads. That's how the internet worked until about 10 years ago. And then Google and Facebook changed the equation by doing these tracking ads, which I don't think is good for users, and I don't think it's good for anyone. So I really think that it's something that needs to change. And in the meantime, what we are doing, if you as a user want to then block this tracking, then you can do so.
Okay. So there is two things, right? So one is tracking, another one is ads. So if I'm correct, so tracking kind of keeps track of what you do online. So even if you say open Facebook and if you have other tabs open, so some of these sites feeds information about to Facebook asking like what actually user is doing. And then based on that, the ads are provided. So when I install Vivaldi, I get like two options. By default, both tracking and ads are allowed, and the user can choose to have only tracking, or you can choose to go with tracking and ad blocking. So if I choose to block my tracking alone and leave the ads, so what is the information that's carried on to the user? I mean, to the Facebook. I mean, they're still giving me ads, right? They're still tracking me what I'm doing, and they're still giving me ads. So is it just enough for me to block the tracking and leave the ads alone?
I think yes, I would say so. I mean, the point is, for a lot of us, and me included, we want to actually have ads because we want free internet content, right? So if you're blocking just the tracking, then you're blocking the kind of the ads that are tracking you, right? And that's kind of, I think for a lot of people, that's what they want to see. They don't mind seeing ads. They just don't want to have the tracking part. But there is a side effect. I mean, you actually end up seeing somewhat less ads if you turn on to the anti-tracking as well, because you will not see ads that rely on tracking either. So there's that, but a lot of sites, they will show normal alternative ads if they don't show the tracking ads. So which I think is good.
So I believe that Vivaldi is built on top of Chromium, and so that we still can use all the Chrome Store features and extensions and all those things as a user. But what is the advantage that this Chromium environment brings to users or even the developers of Vivaldi?
Well, I mean, the reality, because we're using Chromium, and Chromium is the most used browser core with Chrome. I mean, sites will function. There will be no issues like that. I mean, having built Opera in the past and seen the issues with sites blocking browsers that are different or the like, I mean, that's been a problem for companies that are competing with whoever is the leading actor. It used to be like Microsoft that would make life difficult, and you would go to sites and suddenly things might not work if you're not using the correct browser. Now it's about Chrome. Chrome doesn't have the same level of kind of use as IE had, but I think the benefit that we have with using this core is that then again sites generally just work. On the other hand, it's a lot of work because it's always changing, and we are changing a lot of things ourselves. And it's kind of like building on a moving train, right? The train is moving, and you're doing changes, and then some of your changes you find out, hey, that actually messes with how the train works, and then we have to fix that. And it's not trivial to do what we're doing, but we have really talented people, and so it's all good.
Okay, cool. So if you think about, you would say that you don't collect data at all. So there is no user data that's been what sites I access or how do we access. All these things are not collected. But there are certain information that has to be stored in the browser, right? For example, my cache, my cookies, my scripts, my passwords, and all this information. So how secure it is stored within the system, or is it, if it is synced, how is the sync server security and all those things? Can you just tell us about that?
I mean, the way this is stored on your computer is the same the way it's done in Chrome. I would say that's relatively safe. Obviously, you don't want to give access to your computer to a third party because they will be able to find a fair amount of things if you give them access to your computer. Okay. But generally, it's on your computer and it's encrypted. Typically, a lot of this data is then encrypted on your computer, like passwords and the like. You typically have to enter the system passwords to be able to access those data. Now, when it comes to sync, we have done things in a different way. We're kind of pushing very heavily that you provide an encryption password. And you provide an encryption password on your computer. That means that the synchronized data is not readable by us. And that's kind of the way we don't want to be able to read your data. If you don't provide a kind of an encryption password, then in theory, we would be able to read your data on the servers. And we don't want that, which is why we provide. I mean, there's a hassle in this because you have to provide 2 passwords. So it's an extra security level. But I mean, then your data, if someone even breached our servers, they would not be able to reach your data without your encryption password.
Okay. So with respect to the government policies, I'm sure that Vivaldi is storing data according to GDPR for European users and CCPA for California users. Have you heard about anything that's been done for Indians? I mean, is there any law that is coming up here or about data?
I'm not familiar, but the way we view it, we just follow the strictest rules that are there. I mean, it's not like we treat users differently depending on where they're coming from. We just, all our users are important to us, and we will treat all their data in the same way. So if we are dealing with the strict regulations that we have in Europe, those applies to anyone, anywhere.
So the another question is about the incognito mode, or the so-called secure mode in many of these browsers, where they say they don't collect data, but a recent browser update in another browser, what they have given an option is inside incognito mode, you'll have to choose to say whether the company can collect my data or not. So the entire the principle, the policy around the incognito mode is the data is not collected, and inside a particular incognito mode, if you say that if you give the user the option to say that you can collect my data or not, so I feel that the entire incognito mode is so useless, pointless. So is there an incognito mode in Vivaldi, or is there any, have you done anything to address that?
I mean, we have an incognito mode, but obviously, I mean, the main point is we are not really storing anything about what you're kind of, we are not getting any information about what you're doing. Obviously, you have your history and your cache and things like that. And if you go into incognito mode, then that's not going to be stored, right? Yeah. So incognito mode is a lot about that it's not being stored on your computer. The point is it's still visible. If you're browsing sites, they can still see you. And I think people just have to be aware that incognito mode is not going to make you totally safe on the internet. Yeah. I think it's important to, yes, use incognito mode to when you're visiting things that you don't want to be stored on your computer. There are different levels to this. I think for most people, they just don't want to be tracked, right? And the incognito mode is nice if you're visiting some content and you don't want that to be stored on your computer for later. For us, the concept of collecting data on users is just so foreign. I mean, we have a principle, we kind of a motto, we are building a browser for our friends, and you don't kind of spy on your friends. You don't want to be kind of collecting data on your friends. They're your friends. You want to help them. So we try to keep our friends safe. That's kind of what we're all about. And again, we don't engage in this collection of data.
That's good. Thanks a lot. So recently, Vivaldi's Android browser came out of beta, and kind of installed it on a couple of mobiles which I've been using. I found it really fast. I mean, what is currently, if you see any mobile phone that is coming in to the country that's been sold in India, comes with a browser. So if it is a stock Android, probably that will have just a Chrome installed on it by default. And if it is any other company like Xiaomi or Oppo or Vivo, they have their own browsers inside it. So why do OEMs force the browsers, their own browsers on top of us? So it is even difficult to say that I don't want to use your browser, change the default to another browser. It's even difficult to do that. It takes a lot of steps and technical know-how to kind of change the default browser. Why do you think that OEMs kind of force their browsers on top of it? Is it just to collect data, or is there any other business model or revenue out of it?
I mean, there is revenue, and there is obviously data collection, and clearly it's. I mean, Obviously, a lot of the browsers, they have a business model where collecting data is part of the business model or for the companies. I'm not saying all of the OEMs or anything like that. I think I understand why they would like to make their own browsers. I think that's not unreasonable, that they want to kind of differentiate and the like. But clearly, it should be possible for the users to make their own decisions on which browser they want to use. So clearly, there's a benefit of being the first browser on a device, because some people never check out all the browsers and they don't know what they're missing.
Okay. So do you plan to integrate Vivaldi with any of the OEMs, mobile OEMs in the future? Is there any plans to do that? Because that will be really great for me. So as a user, if I find that this comes with a browser that is not tracking me, there's nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely interest. We've been getting requests from OEMs, so we'll have to see what happens in the future. But obviously, we'd like to be pre-installed on phones, and we'll work with any OEMs that want to see us pre-installed. Okay. Obviously, again, not compromising on anything with regards to users, so we'll not be putting any kind of tracking or anything in any versions of Vivaldi.
Initially, I think back in 2016 when we spoke, we did speak about the mail client. So how far is the mail client from being released to the public?
It's very close, actually. It's very close. Hopefully, we're talking very close. Not in a finalized version, because mail is so important. We want to see people try it and kind of play with it, and that's going to be some time in basic testing. Okay. But the point is, we'll be having a technical preview or a snapshot with the mail and with the calendar also pretty soon. You have things like the notes functionality, which is built in, which is really useful. We have, a useful bookmarking function. And then we are adding all the tools. You showed the kind of screenshot function, which is really useful at times. And we add more and more of these functionalities. So basically, you can do what you need inside Vivaldi. Most of the things that you're doing, you can do without having to leave Vivaldi, which is a useful way of working. And then we have RSS feeds, so news feeds as well, support that is coming. And then we have the calendar, and maybe also to be able to take a step away from the big companies that are collecting data, that you're able to choose to use a mail service, whether it's, there's a lot of really good mail services that are not collecting data on you.
Just to get a better picture of Vivaldi's exposure in the country. So do you have any data like how many users are using Vivaldi in India right now on the browser or on the computer or on the mobile?
We're still early days in India. We probably have, less than 100,000 at this time, but it is growing nicely.
Okay. So what is the global numbers like?
Currently active users, as we counted, it's about 1.5 million, I would say, at this time.
That's a huge number. I know that if on your computer, Chrome is the slowest browser, kind of triggers performance, triggers a process for every single tab you open, and that kind of slows down the overall computer performance. And in mobile, it's okay. Chrome browser is a little bit okay. But what about the resources required or the basic hardware requirement for Vivaldi on both PC and Android to run smoothly?
Well, obviously we're based on chromium, but there's a few things that we're doing that is different, right? So we are doing lazy loading of tabs, for example. So that means when you're starting the browser and you have 100 tabs open, which is not uncommon, we don't load all the tabs. We don't load them until you activate them.
So even on a mobile phone, which is having, low-powered mobile phone, like let's say 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB of internal storage, will they be still able to install Vivaldi and run it smoothly?
As long as Chrome will run, Vivaldi will run.
Okay.
That's the basic principle, given that we're using the same code base.
So I think that's all I had to ask you. Do you have anything else to add or anything you want to tell to the subscribers or users?
I just hope you all will try out Vivaldi. I'm pretty sure if you try it and you give us enough time to actually find the special features, you'll love it. And at the same time, I would also like to say, please stay safe. I mean, I know it's tough times at this time. I'm worried about people in India. I'm worried about people all across the world, but I'm particularly worried about people in India. Wishing everyone to stay safe, and hopefully we'll soon get through this pandemic and yeah.
Sure. So thanks a lot, John. Thanks a lot for joining in and taking time to speak to me and my subscribers. So it's really great talking to you, and definitely this browser, I believe that it will be of huge interest to a wide audience. All the best to you and everyone over there at Vivaldi.
Likewise, it's been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. ஸோ நண்பர்களே, ஸோ பேசினதெல்லாம் கேட்டிருப்பீங்கன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஸோ ரொம்ப ஒரு இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கான ஒரு ப்ரௌசர் இது. ஸோ உங்க சொன்னபடி நீங்கள் இன்ஸ்டால் பண்ணி பாருங்க. இன்ஸ்டால் பண்ணி ஒரு சில நாட்கள்லயே இதுல இருக்கிற ஃபீச்சர்ஸ் தான் உங்களுக்கு தெரியாது. பட் யூஸ் பண்ண நல்லா பழக உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சி போகும் அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி. ஸோ நிறைய ஃபீச்சர்ஸ், இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கான ஃபீச்சர்ஸ் தான் இருக்கு. ஸோ இது ப்ரௌசர் டவுன்லோட் பண்றதுக்கான லிங்க் கீழே டிஸ்கிரிப்ஷன்ல விடுறேன். நம்ம சேனல் இன்னும் சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணிட்டு கூடவே இருக்கிற பெல் பட்டனை பிரஸ் பண்ணிடுங்க. ஸோ அடுத்த வீடியோல உங்களை மீண்டும் சந்திக்கும் வரை உங்களிடம் இருந்து விடைபெறுவது உங்கள் நண்பன் கிரிதர். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.